Let's say you're looking to add some bass to the trunk of your vehicle, but don't want to spend the time or the money on a custom enclosure or stereo. Or you just want a setup that you can easily install and remove at any time and make space in the trunk of your car, your Jeep, your Bronco, the back of your SUV. If you find yourself among the many people who just want a simple or cost-effective way to add quality bass to their car, a prefab setup might be the way to go. I'm Cameron with Car Audio Now, and today I'm going to walk you through one of Stinger's latest loaded subwoofer enclosures, the DC2-S12B. I'll take you through some of its key features that I think are important, and then I'm going to install it in a 4Runner to listen to it in action. Let's get to it. I'm going to start out by taking a look at the enclosure and some of the specs of the enclosure. You can see here, I've already unboxed this thing. It comes just as you see it, pre-assembled, pre-carpeted from the factory. All you need to do is take and pull this thing out of a box and plug it in. The enclosure itself is about 21 inches wide here at its widest. It's about 15.5 inches tall here and 18 inches deep at the bottom. So that's the deepest part of this subwoofer enclosure. It's a great size for the trunk of your car, the back of your SUV. It's made, you can see here, it's made from 3/4 inch MDF. So it's solid. That's what I would recommend making any sort of enclosure like this. A solid piece, heavy piece of 3/4 inch MDF. And it's heavy. When you pull this thing out of the box, this weighs about 60 pounds. The box in it came with a couple stickers on it with Team Lift. So before I even picked this thing up, I knew it was going to be a heavy one. And you can see here, this is a slotted design with a two-tone carpeting. So the outer edges here, you can see on the outer edges, the back, the bottom is a black carpeting. It's very clean black carpet. And then on the face of it, it looks like a carbon fiber material. It's actually carbon vinyl. Makes it look and have this carbon fiber look. Very clean. Carpeting in general around this, if I took a look around the fronts and every kind of joint along here, it looks like it was pretty well done. Nothing that I can see that really stands out in terms of flaws or poor quality carpet job. I like the classy looking logo on the top, and just overall the look of the box is super clean. So happy with this. And then over on the side here, you have a pair of solid push terminals. They feel solid. They don't appear to be like gold plated or anything like that, but they look good. Very solid terminals here, not cheap hardware, I wouldn't say. As for the subwoofer specs, Stinger provides a nice, simple spec and installation and tip guide here. You can see this is a 12-inch subwoofer. The frequency response is between 25 and 250 hertz. Has a sensitivity of 85.5 dB, and it's definitely a high power handling sub. You look down here, this is this is rated for 1,000 watts RMS and a 1,500 watt peak at 1 ohm. So this thing is really going to slam if you power it well. And then below that, you can see they also give a couple other tips, like the speaker wire gauge, right? This says 16 to 12 gauge is recommended. I would recommend 12 or 14. That's what I'd probably go with, depending on how long of a run you're going to make between the amplifier and this subwoofer. And then down below that, they tell you to set the amplifier subsonic filter to 28 hertz. Another nice piece of information that kind of streamlines the setup of the amplifier in this subwoofer when you go to install it. So let's talk a little bit more about the subwoofer itself, though. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this out and give you a better close-up of the subwoofer and some of the core features of it, and pull it out of the subwoofer to do that. So let me go ahead and pull it on out. So one thing to notice right out of the gate that I kind of liked, you can see these are almost these are 1.5 inch, right around there, machine screws. So these are not wood screws that could potentially strip out or fail like a traditional wood screw that you would use just in your enclosure. So these are just another nice little indicator that the hardware that they're using on the subwoofer is higher quality than what you would see if you purchased one of these enclosures at your local stereo shop, depending on how the quality of that stereo shop, of course. But just want to call that out. Internally, you can see it's very well supported. Structure inside is very well done. Really meant to take a pounding by a powerful subwoofer without giving any failure. You can see they also insulated the outer edges and the back, probably for vibration and just sound deadening a little bit, just to make this thing that much sound that much better. Quality wire, nothing really to note here. It's pretty thick, looks like 14 or 12 gauge wire here. They tinned it, which is nice to see. Looks nice in here. So let me go ahead and pull the subwoofer out and start running through some of the features there. So here's your subwoofer. There's a couple things to note quickly about this subwoofer in terms of its design and its features. First off, this is Stinger's DC2-12B subwoofer. It's a dual 2 ohm sub that's pre-wired for 1 ohm from the factory. I'll show you that when I flip this thing over. This is what's included in this loaded enclosure. And on the face here, the cone, obviously the most prominent feature when you're looking at it from this angle, this is a fiber matrix paper cone. Basically, they use a paper fiber or pulp blend, and then they use a strong resin to hold it together. They compress it and use that resin to hold it together. Different manufacturers have different blends and techniques to make these cones super rigid, super durable. As long as it's resin filled or reinforced, normally these paper or pulp cones are pretty tough and they aren't susceptible to moisture or humidity. That said, I probably wouldn't put a towel, like a wet towel, over this subwoofer for an extended period of time or anything in your trunk. And then if you flip it over here, and this thing is very heavy, you'll see the source of the weight right when you look at it here. It weighs about, first off, it weighs about 26 pounds, which is definitely on the heavier side for a subwoofer, a 12-inch subwoofer, I'll say that. But first thing is the motor and the magnet, which is this right here, this component right here. Stinger uses a ferrite magnet, which ferrite is a material that's known for being heavier, and it's pretty massive, as you can see here. It takes up the majority of the back end side. Is super back end heavy. Pound for pound, ferrite isn't as strong as more of the expensive neodymium magnets, but many people argue that the ferrite material performs better on speakers that are designed for higher volumes like this. It's just one of those things, but nonetheless, ferrite is a pretty common material that's used on subwoofers. Also contributing to the weight factor and rigidity of this thing is the frame. So if you look at it here, this sub is a 6-beam cast aluminum frame. This frame feels super stout. I wouldn't be concerned about flex or unwanted resonance or distortion here. Cast aluminum is kind of the standard for these types of rigid frames, and also serves as a big heat sink, which is great. The aluminum material. And speaking of heat, move this a little bit. You can also see here there are some ventilation ports that are built into this cast frame. Cooling is definitely important, especially when you're talking a 1,000-watt subwoofer like this. So these little vents that are spread throughout the frame let cool air in and hot air out, right? And again, this is a cast aluminum frame, so kind of serves as a heat sink and allows the heat to dissipate and cool sort of the motor and the rest of the subwoofer, right? And then also, last thing I'll call out here, push terminals, very similar to what's on the outside of the closure. Nice to see here. And then you can also see, I did not put these wires in here. When I pulled the subwoofer from the enclosure, you can see it's already pre-wired for a 1 ohm setup. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this thing back together now. I'm gonna put it back in the enclosure and start to install it in our 4Runner so that I can show you what it looks like and what it sounds like in person and give you a first-hand look at the sub enclosure in a real vehicle. So let me go ahead and do that. So here's a vehicle that we're gonna throw this setup in. You're looking at a 2001 Toyota 4Runner. Trying to keep it pretty simple today. We're going to take and run new wires for the amplifier from obviously the battery, come back through the panels along the side of the door. You can see the trunk where we're going to put this today. Here's the box. You can get a good sense of like the actual size, pretty large. In terms of the amplifier install, the location, we're actually going to go and tuck this into the corner, into this little panel back here. Let me give you a good look. I don't have the amplifier out at the moment, but the amplifier is going to tuck up neatly into this corner behind the panel, and we'll run wire through this panel into the amplifier and back out. Probably also put some ventilation in this so that the amplifier can breathe right. On the inside, you can see this has an aftermarket Sony unit, so we're pretty set up in terms of signal for the amplifier. We're just going to run an RCA from the back of this straight back to the amplifier in the back. Pretty easy. But if you did not have let's say an aftermarket head unit in here, you could also use a high-low converter that'll essentially take the signal from your front or your rear speakers and put that into a RCA format for you to wire back to the amplifier as well. We're going to be using a 4-gauge amp kit. This is a Stinger True Spec. This gives you the 4-gauge positive, negative. It gives you the RCAs that you need. Some mounting zip ties, has pretty much everything you need for this amplifier and subwoofer installation right out of the box. So we're going to be throwing this in here today, running the wire along the side of the car. Ultimately, this has everything that you need though to wire up the amp and the subwoofer. Pretty straightforward. Here's the amplifier that we're going to be using today. This is Stinger Audio's MT1000.1, meaning it's monoblock. So basically the way that this is going to be running, this is a 1000-watt amplifier, monoblock amplifier at 1 ohm. It's 700 watts at 2 ohms, 400 watts at 4 ohms. If you recall earlier in the video, the 12-inch sub that we have, the Stinger sub, is actually pre-wired for 1 ohm. So this is going to be running 1000 watts times 1. This thing's going to really slam here. So this is Stinger Audio's brand new lineup of amplifiers. It's compact enough to fit right into that cubby. So excited to get this thing in there and mounted. So let me show you where we're at here at this point. We've gone ahead and ran power, ground, remote, and signal from the aftermarket head unit here through the panels down on the bottom here and across. So we've ran it to this rear panel back here, which is obviously unmounted right now. We're gonna mount these nicely, drill a hole, put a grommet here, and run these straight to this amplifier, which as you can see, it fits perfectly in this panel. Very compact. We have access to tuning on the top. This is where the RCAs go, and then down here we're going to be able to get those power, ground, remote, and then obviously the subwoofer signal wire out. We also wanted to mention, so the subwoofer box does come with push terminals, which means you can easily pull those terminals or the speaker wire out of that box. But what I went ahead and did, I like using these XT60 plugs, and what that allows us to do is quickly unplug that subwoofer and remove it, but without leaving exposed wire, right? So this power wire is obviously signal wires is hooked up to the amplifier, so every time you remove those, even if you do use those push plugs, you're gonna have to somehow protect those wires from shorting out. So I like to use these XT wires. I've got the male on the subwoofer, so we're gonna use those. So the last thing The last things that we're going to do, we're going to button up this panel. Also, we use some machine screws on the back side. You can see we double nutted them on the amplifier so they don't come loose, because this thing's probably going to shake a little bit. But on the back side, the reverse side, we use some machine screws here. You can see the screws, all 4 of them, to secure this amplifier very well to this panel. So the last thing we're going to do, we're going to tidy up this wiring. We're going to button up the panel here, put it back on. We're also going to run, we ran the subwoofer volume control knob here from the back here all the way to the front. We're going to drill and mount that control knob in the front, and then we're going to hook up the subwoofer. All right, here we are. We've got the subwoofer installed. It's wired up. You can see the amplifier about 90% of the way there. We're going to wrap up and put some looms on this. Fits perfectly. We still have access here to tune it up. We place the volume control knob up in the center console, right in between the 2 cup holders. Perfect position, super easy to access at any point. I've always liked that location there. So overall installation went really well, super easy, and a great position for the amplifier. The next step that we're going to take is to just tune up the gains on the amplifier, and then fire this thing up and do a test run. So for tuning, I've got the SMD DD1. This is a distortion detector, pretty easy to hook up to the amplifiers. So I'm going to go ahead and run a 40 hertz signal through a test tone through the system. I'm going to crank up the head unit to about 85–90% volume, and then what I'm going to do is monitor the SMD unit here while I'm cranking up the gain. And what'll happen is, as I do that, these will light up, and I'll show you that here in a second. So you can see I have 40 hertz signal, and as I turn up the gain, the distortion light's going to come up. That tells me that the signal is distorted. So I'm going to back it off and get it back within range here so that it's no longer distorting. So now that I have everything wired, installed, I've got the gains and the amplifier tuned, I've got the volume control knob installed, everything's installed in the vehicle. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and do some testing, and I think the best way to do this is using an RTA, so a real-time analyzer and a mic that will detect the decibel level, SPL, right? So Stinger Off-Road was kind enough to provide us with this audio-controlled DM RTA. This is an RTA mic and much more, and as I open this up, you'll see there's a ton of cool equipment here. It's got the DM RTA. This is the brains of the unit. You have the CM20 microphone, which I'm going to use. Got a Bluetooth module. This thing actually has a battery installed within it, so I don't have to have this connected to power. But what I'm going to go ahead and do, and I'm going to show you the interface as I do this, I'm going to connect the microphone and go sit in the car in the listening position and crank up the subwoofer as loud as I can get it. And I'm going to show you what the decibel level looks like while I'm in the car and what it peaked out at. So I'm going to go and do that. And as I do it, I'm going to show the interface on the screen and what the SPL and the decibel level looks like as I crank up the volume. So I'm sitting in the car now, and I'm going to start to crank up the volume, and you'll see the decibel level start to rise here. And they'll rise pretty quickly. Once I reach the peak bass of this song, you'll see it in a moment. Boom, 134.1 was the maximum that I saw, which is pretty substantial for a single 12-inch subwoofer in this vehicle. So very loud. I'm super impressed with this setup in this car. I think all in all, I was really impressed with that, not only the look, the design, how well constructed the enclosure was for this this loaded subwoofer enclosure, but also obviously the output, 134.1 decibels, and that was the songs that I used to test, you know, and there's probably more that you might even be able to get out of this. It was loud. So I think this is a great product for the SUV applications, the larger trunk applications, but also your Broncos and Jeeps. When you pull the top off of this ported design is really meant to emit your bass, and it'll do a really good job at doing that even in an open environment. So all in all, very impressed with this installation. I loved the matching Stinger 1,000-watt amplifier. It fit very nicely into the cubby that we used here. The Stinger amplifier kit that Stinger Off-Roaded provided as well was perfect and had everything contained. So all in all, double thumbs up for this 12-inch subwoofer. And I'd recommend it for any of those applications that I described. It's loud and it's gonna slam. Thanks for watching. If you guys like the content of this video, be sure to subscribe to our channel so we can keep videos like this coming your way.